The three assessments that I gave my focal student Henry were the running record with the comprehension conversation, the fluency, 6-dimension fluency rubric. I also gave him as subtest the maze assessment and the vocabulary and context. So with the running record, I had to calculate his reading level myself because my middle school, as well as like middle schools as a whole, really don't tend to use Fountas and Pinnell. I even asked my mentor teacher this, and he said that only the elementary schools used Fountas and Pinnell. I picked level Y because his MAP score for reading was pretty low, so I figured that was about a lower level. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that he only made like 4 errors. As well, he self-corrected twice. This put him at like a 98% accuracy rate, which was at his independent level. I would say that his errors would come from either reading the first two letters and just sort of substituting them. Like for instance, he read this instead of this, or from him being unable to decode like 3 to 4 syllable words, like experimentation, he read experimental. But that's to be expected of a middle schooler who often doesn't know how to decode those words right away. The comprehension conversation told a different story. So he got like ones all across the board, like within the text, beyond the text, and about the text. What I noticed with him is that he tended to like focus on a handful of details while neglecting everything else. Like for instance, he said, I asked him, what did you learn about the International Space Station? He said, it's getting built in space. It's a big station of space shuttles, and it's still in construction. And when I asked him to describe the ISS, he said space station will be big and people can bring their space shuttles there. So he's really only focusing on a handful of details. So that would put his total score at a 3, which is unsatisfactory. As for the 6-dimension fluency rubric, I noticed that he had pretty good fluency, like his pausing was great, his phrasing was all right, it was like as if he was just talking to me, and his rate was at a steady rate, but albeit slightly faster. He was still easy to follow. He didn't really put a lot of stress or intonation, but he also confided in me that he didn't really like to read, so it could also just be him wanting to get the reading over and done with. So in total, he's at a 9 there. And as for the subtests, I gave him those subtests to determine his comprehension because I noticed that was his biggest problem. He wasn't struggling anywhere else but comprehension. So the first one I gave him was the maze assessment. So I noticed that he had a struggle with comprehension. I decided to give him the maze assessment. After showing it to my mentor teacher, the two of us went outside the classroom in the hallway and I gave him the assessment. Out of the 50 circling questions, he got 5 wrong. This put him like a 90%, which is his instructional level, which is ideal for teaching. So for subtest 2, I was initially very lost on what I should be testing him on next because he was good at phonics, phonemic awareness. He didn't really need help with fluency. So I got some help from Dr. Burke, and she said that she suggested the vocabulary and context. So I picked 1 tier 1 word, 2 tier 2 words, and 2 tier 3 words for him. And I found that he also struggled with vocabulary too. He scored a 6, which for that level is unsatisfactory. And some errors that he made were like either focusing too much on the space shuttle context, like for instance, I asked him to define components. The paper wanted parts and pieces of something. He said all this stuff that a spaceship needs. So he was focusing way too much on that spaceship aspect. And he also gave like very simple definitions too, like for instance, deteriorate. The paper wanted to worsen condition or disintegrate. He put lose. So That's where he got a 1 on it too. The one definition where he got a 2, it was destinations, either places of intended arrival or places to which one is journeying. He just said places, which is close, but not close enough to warrant a 3. So he got a 6, and as I said before, the sub-assessments were to make sure that to assess like where specifically in comprehension he was struggling, because I couldn't just make my lessons only comprehension. So as for the testing situation and environment, I either tested him at a small table off to the side of my mentor teacher's classroom that he typically uses for tier 2 instruction, or outside in the hall. And I could only do Thursdays because Tuesdays are shortened days, and it would have been really difficult to try to get those assessments done. I either tested him during my mentor teacher's advisory period, which my case study student is also there, lucky me, and I also tested him during like independent work time so he could stay focused. Some strengths I noticed with him is that he demonstrates good phonics and phonemic awareness. He doesn't struggle in any of those components except for what's grade appropriate for him. He also can attempt to sound out words that he doesn't know. Like some kids would just straight up try to skip over them, just be like, I'm not going to read that, I'm going to wait for the teacher to say it. But he actively tried, and he demonstrates adequate fluency, meaning he doesn't need like a lot of intervention there. However, some student needs I noticed for him is that he struggled with comprehension, more specifically main ID and details. Like I said, he only gave like a handful of details rather than like focus on the big picture and all the details. And I noticed that he sometimes struggles to pick out the appropriate word to use in a context. Like for instance, the first question he picked chuckle instead of glimpse, which isn't the right word to use in that maze assessment. And also, finally, he tends to focus too much on one context when determining vocabulary or give like a simple definition of the word. Like for instance, what I said with components or durable or destinations. And some implication for classroom tasks I have is that I would provide Henry with explicit instruction, find the main ID, including strategies he can use to locate in the text. I would also model comprehension strategies, such as like developing background knowledge, making connections to new information. All that stuff could really help him. And also when reading general like nonfiction, fiction text, model like general reading comprehension by having an explicit discussion about the context, text of the text, more specifically what part is important and why. Two of these that I got from previous lectures.